Hello everyone, how are we going? Welcome to Beer with Dom. We're actually up to episode 2, which is pretty exciting. So everything seems to be going well so far. Last week turned out to be pretty good, so we're going to continue with it for now. Today I'm actually drinking Lucky Buddha. So Lucky. I like the bottle actually. It's actually a really nice beer. It tastes light. It's not a light beer, but it tastes light. It actually feels like a bigger bottle, but I think it's actually a little bit shorter, and then it's just wider. But it's actually a really nice beer. The reason why I chose Lucky is because we need some luck in this market this week. And the reason is because we've had, obviously, you look at the US market, you've had the Fed, and then you've had all the Russia and Ukraine stuff, which has been going crazy. It'll be interesting. Shouldn't say it'll be interesting to see if anything happens with it. It'll be interesting to see how the market reacts next week if nothing happens, if it's still the same, or whether investors will just say, well, it is what it is, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, so we're going to continue. News this week: the S&P ASX 200, which is basically Australia's version of the S&P 500, is up 0.11% this week, and the S&P 500 in the US is 0.08%. So basically trading sideways with a fair bit of volatility. Crypto news, heaps of volatility, mostly down if we're being honest. Bitcoin appears to be more stable than other years, which I've noticed, which is interesting. I think it's about 1.2 or 1.12% today. So definitely interesting. NFT platform Cent practically halted most of their sales earlier this week due to fraud. So I actually did a video on it. Cent is the platform that sold Jack Dorsey's first ever tweet. So Jack Dorsey, if you don't know who he is, he's the CEO, well, the original founder. He's not the CEO anymore, but the original founder of Twitter, and he was the CEO for a while. He also runs Square. So I'm sure you've seen those Square payment processing things before. Moderna insiders selling. So the CEO this week made a really large trade and then removed himself from Twitter, which is a little bit interesting. I don't think there has been a backstory as to why that happened yet. My thoughts is he's sold, and he's sold for whatever reason. I don't think it's because any bad news has come out, because it's been about a week now. Nothing's come out. But he's sold a lot of shares, not all his shares, but a lot of, I think it was about $1 million worth of shares. Don't quote me on that. You might have to actually check. And then he deleted his Twitter account, and I think it's because he doesn't want to explain why. And I think the reason why is because Moderna are at the front lines of all this COVID stuff, and I think they're seeing that this is actually coming to an end. That the pandemic itself is coming to an end, especially, and most countries are moving on with it now. But vaccines are still a very big part of it. But it'll be interesting to see if next year, if governments are as heavy on vaccines or not. I know there's a lot of vaccine mandates going around in different countries. I know here we're relaxing a lot of those mandates as time goes on. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any mandates around next year at all. I'm going to predict that there probably will be some, but it'll be interesting to see. Airbnb posted a $55 million profit in quarter Q4. This week they announced that. So revenue was above 2019 levels, showing strong signs coming out of the pandemic. Downside of this is it shows a lot of spending is still happening. Spending that the Fed doesn't like, so it doesn't back up that inflation's coming down. It only proves the point, which is not a good sign. But for Airbnb, that's great. It means they can get back to making some business, and obviously it shows that they didn't let the pandemic affect them too much. Obviously, I'm sure it did, but in terms of share price and things like that. Apple getting into fintech, which could be more bad news for PayPal shareholders. So PayPal's gone through some turbulent times in the last sort of year and a half, 2 years. Share price just keeps dipping. Even with their partnership with Amazon, and it didn't seem to make any difference whatsoever I don't even know if it pumped the day that information was released. But if Apple gets into fintech, it could be a big game changer. Not so much for Apple. I don't know if it'll be a huge money maker for Apple. Maybe it would be. Well, I'm sure it would be huge, but in comparison, their business is just so big now. Things like that are like, it's like putting a feather to a way, right? It's not really going to make a huge difference. Warren Buffett perfectly timed the market with Activation Blizzard. Obviously, Activation Blizzard was picked up by Microsoft. A lot of people made the connection saying, well, Warren Buffett's good friends with Bill Gates. What's going on there? But in reality, Bill Gates is not the CEO of Microsoft anymore. I think he still has a lot to do with the business, but he's not CEO anymore. And there's a lot of people inside Berkshire Hathaway that make investment decisions. So, and I'm not entirely sure if Warren Buffett ticks them all off. So maybe it had nothing. Maybe there was nothing fishy going on at all. BlockFi was penalized $100 million. I did a video on this really not long ago, I think it was 2-3 hours ago. So basically what happened is the SEC did an investigation into BlockFi, determined that that they were misleading people, and the fact that they're not registered as money managers or an investment platform, basically, SEC didn't like that, so they fined them for it. There was over 30 states in the US that also didn't want them selling their products in those states. So $50 million of that penalty of the $100 million goes towards those states, which is over 30 states. Tomorrow, we have a live stream. We have a live stream with Michael Pomp. So for those of you who don't know who Michael is, I actually used to work with Michael. He's a really good guy. He knows a lot about NFTs and a lot about crypto. So we're going to jump in a live stream with him. It'll be great to catch up with him. I haven't caught up with him properly, as in had a conversation with him. We just text every now and then. So it'll be really cool to see him again, and we're going to do that over a live stream, which is going to be good fun. What are we up to now? So, what I would like to do, let's check out Weeble. So, we've got a lot going on here. So, if we have a look, obviously the S&P 500, like I said, it's up that 0.11% today. What have we got up here? So, we've got top gainers. What were the top gainers today? I don't know any of these. Top losers. Hopefully, I don't know any of these either. Roblox, whoa, that's huge. Roblox, 26%. It's very, very tough. Squarespace, that's an interesting one. I wouldn't be surprised if Squarespace and Wix there as well, maybe more so Squarespace, went down with Shopify did their earnings not long ago, I think it was yesterday. And they had good earnings, but Shopify said they expect that Q1 of 2022 is going to possibly be not the greatest, and then Q4 it should be back to normal again. Toast is down as well. Wow. And there you go. What do we have? Earnings. We have earnings. Walmart has their earnings call coming up. That's on the 17th. So that'll be tonight, or like early morning tomorrow. Roku, Dropbox will be interesting to see how they're going. Obviously, Dropbox through the pandemic, I'm actually not 100% sure, but I would assume that Dropbox had a big rise during the pandemic. A lot of those companies did with the remote working. So it'll be interesting to see how they're going. What else we got here? Park Hotels and Resorts. None of these are catching my eye. Alright, what do we got on the 52-week highs? Don't know any of those. What about near highs? Coca-Cola, wow. That shows you how those value stocks go during markets like these. I was almost about to say it's a bear market. I don't actually know by definition if it is a bear market yet. But it certainly looks like we're heading towards a recession. And as well, like, I don't think that's a bad thing. A lot of people say, don't spread that kind of FUD, but I've got to be honest. I don't think it's terrible if we head towards a recession. It'll fix the inflation problem pretty quick, I would imagine. And it'll be good to see housing a little bit cheaper, especially here in Australia. Housing needs to be a little bit cheaper. It's had a massive run over the last 2 years, which has been crazy. There's nothing wrong with a bit of a distribution of wealth and a bit of a transfer of wealth going on. It's a good opportunity if we go into a recession to grow your net worth as well. You can get into things quite cheap, and generally there's a run up afterwards if you invest in the right things. Got here. All right, let's head to CoinMarketCap. All right, so we've got CoinMarketCap here. We're going to have a look at the top one. So Bitcoin down this week, 1.58%. 24 hours, 1.4, pretty close there. Ethereum down 2.62%, 4% on the week. Tether, obviously, that's linked to the US dollar there. BNB is actually up 0.04%, so they've done well. XRP down 6.66%. So everything's going down. Avalanche has been actually doing really well. Avalanche, I think, in the last since the start of the year, I think he's up almost 40%. They've been doing really well. Let's have a look at that actually, just to double check that one. So let's go. Well, it's been a bit more than a month, hasn't it? Let's go 3 months. Where are we? So we've got 2022 here. Oh, so no, it's not up that much. It's not up at all, actually. We've had a bit dip. So I think it's up 40% from here. It's done pretty well. Yeah, here we go. So we're at 55, and now we're sitting at 93. So that's almost 50%. So we're doing really well there. Obviously, Wonderland is a fork of Avalanche as well. What else we got going on here? Dogecoin. I'm still amazed that Dogecoin. It's not a top 10 anymore, but I'm still amazed that it's even a top 20 in market cap. That's doing really well. Shiba Inu. I'm even more amazed about that, being that it was pretty much a copy. But obviously, Shiba Inu has their staking protocols and things like that as well. So it's doing really well there. Chainlink, Tron. I don't know if I want to see Tron doing anything, to be honest. All right, let's go to Money Magazine. Let's have a look. What do we got here? What do we got? Any interesting articles? Oh, here we go. You can now claim your rats at tax time, what you've missed. All right, let's have a look at this by Nicola Field. Here we go. $415 million Valentine's Day spent. Rats became tax deductible and motorists face a crude awakening. Here are 5 things you may have missed this week. Okay, so this is going to go over more than just rats. So the price of love, $111. Australians are set to spend $415 million on gifts for Valentine's Day. Heads up, that's Monday. With flowers, chocolates, jewellery being the most popular items people will buy their significant other. But if V-Day rolls around, no gift appears, don't feel broken-hearted. Roy Morgan research found that 1 in 4 men and just over 1 in 10 women will fork out for a Valentine's Day present. Gee, come on there. It's interesting. Among Roy Morgan's survey, 2,717 respondents, the average spend on Valentine's Day gifts is around $111. That's interesting. However, one respondent claimed to have purchased a $60,000 Tesla for their sweetheart. Someone's going to have a great Valentine's Day. I find that interesting. Unless that person's really, really wealthy, I would actually imagine that they had already planned to buy it, and then he's like, "Yeah, I got a Tesla for Valentine's Day present." Jesus, no way. Foreign spies target online dating apps. Interesting. Speaking of romance, it seems like online dating world is starting to attract a growing number of 007s. Triple 007s. I get it. Our national spy agency ASIO is tracking suspicious approaches on popular dating platforms like Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge to identify foreign spies seeking intelligence from unwitting victims. Apparently, in the last 2 years, have seen thousands of Australians with access to classified information targeting by foreign spies using social media profiles. Dating apps websites already offer rich pickings for romance scammers. Consumer watchdog ACCC sees the romance scams cost Australians $131 million in 2020. Wow, that's pretty significant, actually. I didn't think it was that big of a problem. Director General of ASIO, Mike Burgess, says my message for any potential victims on these sites is a familiar one. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. By the way, if you're like looking at this number and you're like, oh, it doesn't seem that big, keep in mind if you're watching from the US, this is in Australia, so we don't have as many people in Australia as there is in the US. Pretty much divided by 10. So it'd be like if you guys were like losing like close to $1 billion, which might actually be happening. Rats to be tax deductible. This is what we want to know, right? How's this for the ultimate sign that we're living through a pandemic? 2 years ago, none of us had ever heard of rapid antigen tests. Today, they're not only the latest must-have health accessory, rats have also become our most recent tax deduction. The government announced on the 7th of February that COVID-19 testing expenses, both PCR, nasal swabs, rats, will be tax deductible. This applies to whether you're required to attend the workplace or have an option to work from home. This totally makes sense because when you think about it, a lot of, if you work in a restaurant, right, and someone in the restaurant has COVID, you can't expect, especially people who are on minimum wage, you can't expect them because, during the peak of the pandemic, this was probably happening like every couple of weeks, every 3 weeks, something like that. Can't expect them to go and buy all these rats tests, and they're hard enough to find anyway. It's much easier for the business just to buy them, hold on to them. Like if you've got 10 employees, buy 30 of the friggin' things, and then if you need them, they're there, right? Assistant Treasurer Michael Sakur says this change will take effect from the start of 2021-2022 tax year. So for those of you watching in the US that don't really understand what that is, so the 2021 and 2022 tax year, basically what that is our tax year runs from July through June rather than a normal January to December. So it's a little bit weird. So they say 2021 to 2022 because it's Q3, Q4 2021, Q1, Q2 2022. I never really liked this, but if I look at it from a business point of view, it totally makes sense if you run and own a business because, that way you can go on holidays halfway through the year, right? And for us, that would be in winter. So a perfect opportunity to go overseas to a warmer climate. While these measures are yet to come into law, if you paid for a COVID-19 test or you plan to stock up on rats, it's worth holding onto those receipts. Okay, so she's implying here that even though it hasn't come into effect, okay, so it's come into effect, but it hasn't become law. So they're assuming it's going to go into law, and then you'll be able to claim it, right? All right, lockdowns lingering by remorse. Long days spent in lockdown 2021 saw most of us turn the internet for a spot of retail therapy. Data from the Australian Post shows online shopping skyrocketed in 2021. During last year's Sydney lockdown, online sales jumped 63.5% year on year. However, for many of us, the joy was short-lived. Finder research shows 5 million Aussies regret a pandemic purchase. Money spent on clothing, used cars, and bicycles are leading sources of buyer remorse. Kate Brown, personal finance expert at Finder, says online shopping was a popular lockdown escape for many of us, but she adds many of us splurged on things we didn't need or couldn't afford and now are regretting that decision. Interesting. One solution to wash away the shopping guilt is to cash unwanted buys. Brown explains selling items online is a great way to make some of your money back. Most online marketplaces will let you list your items for free. It's better than like a giveaway, like throwaway economy, right? But I just find it ironic how they brought it online and now they're selling it online. Guys, if you want to know anything about personal finance, just learn the guns and butter analogy Don't buy stuff you don't need. Easier said than done, I do understand. Alright, now let's have a look at the Wall Street Journal. Now, I actually paid for this because I couldn't find any good publications on stocks or business that were not free. It's actually really annoying. But it cost me $2 a month for the first 12 months, so it was bugger all. So let's have a look. Can Bitcoin be a national currency? El Salvador is trying to find out. Let's have a look at this. This will be interesting. Hey VA, thanks for jumping in, man. Wall Street Journal. Can Bitcoin be a national currency? El Salvador is trying to find out. The currency made Bitcoin legal tender last September and now aiming to raise $1 billion to fund expansive economic policies by cashing in on the crypto craze. But the IMF warns Bitcoin is too risky and Salvadorians are mostly sticking to dollars. That could totally make sense. It's pretty volatile. It has improved though this year quite massively. So that is promising. El Salvador President Nayib Bukele called Canadian video game developer and Bitcoin enthusiast Samson Mao up on the stage at Beachside Bitcoin Convention in November that had the flair of a rock concert, in front of a screen emblazoned with the phrase "Feel the Bit." Mr. Mao unveiled the tiny Central American country novel international finance idea. A plan to raise $1 billion by issuing the world's first Bitcoin-backed sovereign fund. Wow. The crowd, a mix of mostly crypto advocates, Bukele fans, and few curious locals, erupted in loud cheers as they filmed the events on their smartphones. Be interested to know whether he's quite liked and respected over there or not. Bitcoin is going to change the world. Mr. Bukele, addressed in all white, said at the event, "It's the evolution of humankind and we're going there." In less than 3 years in office, Mr. Bukele has moved fast to remake his country. He has removed judges, stacked the courts with his supporters, harassed journalists reporting on corruption, and clashed with the Biden administration over Mr. Bukele's efforts to cement power. Wearing leather jackets, aviator shades, and backward baseball cap, he has revealed in the political skirmishes, jokingly referred to himself as the coolest dictator. Okay, I'm gonna take a guess. He's probably not that liked. The 40-year-old president is perhaps best known for turning El Salvador into a real-life laboratory for Bitcoin, providing enthusiasts and skeptics alike with a test case to see how far crypto can go beyond its current status as a popular speculative investment and unregulated means of exchange. In September, El Salvador became the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, forcing local merchants to accept it as a payment. The country is aiming to cash in on the crypto craze by tapping new markets to borrow and using profits from Bitcoin mining to back expensive economic policies under its president. Mr. Bukele says Bitcoin wealth can address the poverty and violence of El Salvador and turn it into the Singapore of Latin America. Wow, big statement. Wow. The bond sale will test whether developing economics can skirt traditional Wall Street banks and the lenders of the last resort, such as the International Monetary Fund, which often impose austerity conditions in favour of funds from a growing pool of investors in the $1 trillion world of Bitcoin. So far, the reaction has been divided. The IMF has criticised El Salvador's move to Bitcoin, saying its price swings are too risky for the small economy, and that Mr. Bukele's policies are pushing indebtedness to an unsustainable path. Since Bitcoin's adoption as currency, its use in day-to-day transactions have been rare, and a recent poll found that 70% of respondents didn't trust the government's move. Interesting. The planned bond, meanwhile, will trade on the platform restricted for Americans, limiting their participation. El Salvador's traditional foreign sovereign bonds were the worst performance of emerging markets last year, trading at a steep discount and offering yields near 17% because of rising default risks. Yeah, I suppose that's the thing. It's not backed by Uncle Sam, is it? The offering of Bitcoin-backed bond, which the administration has dubbed the Volcano Bond, is slated for as early as this month or March. The bond will provide US dollars to the country and must be paid back in dollars. Okay. El Salvador's government says it plans to use half the bond offering, $500 million, to buy more Bitcoin, and the other half for infrastructure development, including for a future Bitcoin city, tax-free zone for entrepreneurs, where new Bitcoin could be mined using the thermal power from extinct nearby volcano. Wow, this guy's got some plans, man. The 10-year bond offers investors an interest rate of 6.5%, with additional dividends after 5 years. After El Salvador plans to start selling some of its Bitcoin investment at a potentially higher future price and reaps the expected profits. Mr. Mao, 42-year-old chief strategy officer at the tech firm Blockstream, which is coordinating the offering, said in an interview that El Salvador will have no trouble raising the money, largely from crypto fans that want to invest in a country pioneering Bitcoin adoption. I actually don't doubt that at all. Mr. Mao, who's marketing the offering to investors, said he has already received $500 million in verbal commitment from prospective buyers. The figure couldn't be confirmed by the Wall Street Journal. Salvadorian officials say that they are already considering raising as much as $5 billion through several more Bitcoin-backed bond offerings. Mr. Burkill and Finance Minister declined to comment. One local financial executive said demand for the bond will be linked to its novelty, not El Salvador's economic fundamentals, referring it to a meme bond. Yeah, I suppose if they're going to invest half of it into Bitcoin anyway, if I read that right, we'll just invest in Bitcoin, right? But yeah, it'd be interesting. Man, this is a big article, isn't it? The president, a former nightclub owner, marketing executive, is gambling with taxpayers on an attempt to keep up high levels of public spending that are a key ingredient to his popularity, said Carlos Acevedo, a former governor of El Salvador's central bank. Because El Salvador adopted the US dollar as its official currency 2 decades ago, it can't crank up the printing process like most countries when it needs to spend more money. It has to earn the dollars through exports, remittance, or tourism, or borrow them. Under Mr. Burkill, who took office in 2019, the country's budget gap doubled to almost 6% of gross domestic product in 2021. The IMF, which is in protracted negotiations over $1.3 billion financial aid program for the country, has called Mr. Burkill's government to ditch Bitcoin status as a national currency, saying its price swings made it too risky for consumers to be used as collateral for foreign bonds. Developing countries around the world sell government bonds in foreign currencies such as dollars, euros, or yen to fund public spending. Some of them, like Argentina, have defaulted on numerous occasions as they struggle to earn significant hard currency to pay down the debt. With Bitcoin, the stakes are higher. The bond can lure investors who are searching for a higher yield or aren't allowed to invest directly in Bitcoin due to regulations, the IMF noted in a recent report. But the crypto asset lacks the economic fundamentals to support its value, and its trades are entirely on sentiment. Its sharp price swings could increase debt servicing costs or force the government to use El Salvador's limited foreign currency reserves to cover a loss in value. Economists say the adoption of Bitcoin fits with Mr. Burkill's self-styled image as a young, hip leader, leaning on financial and technological innovation. The move has given him celebrity status among a wealthy global community of Bitcoin enthusiasts. Most Bitcoiners are willing to die on the hill and right now that is El Salvador, Mr. Mayor said. Mr. Bukele, a former heads-on mayor of the national's capital, San Salvador, won the presidential election by landslide in 2019, pledging to eradicate corruption in the country long scarred by civil war, gang violence and drug trafficking. For his presidential run, he broke from the country's dominant leftist political movement, the FMLN, and formed his own party along with his siblings, who have gone from campaign organisers to unofficial presidential advisors on matters ranging from Bitcoin to pandemic response. Since his election, gang violence has fallen sharply, allegedly after he made secret truce with them. According to US officials, the IMF estimates the economy grew 10% last year thanks to sound management of the pandemic. His administration aggressively pursued COVID-19 vaccines early, helping Mr. Bukele hit approval ratings above 80%, polls show. That made him the most popular leader in Latin America at the time when the most incumbents were being vilified. Absolutely crazy. At the same time, opponents and rights groups say that he has grabbed power by firing his attorney general and by firing justices of the country's top court and dozens of judges in lower tribunals, so he could stack the judiciary. He also had the Supreme Court reinterpret and the Constitution to allow him to run for a second term. Interesting. The maneuvers have soured ties with Washington. Wow. The plan to adopt Bitcoin as a currency took Salvadorians by surprise when it was first unveiled in June. But Jack Mullers, a 27-year-old American Bitcoin entrepreneur, he wore a baggy hoodie, a baseball cap as he presented the plan at the Bitcoin conference in Miami under the title of "One Small Step for Bitcoin, One Giant Leap for Mankind." Mr. Mullers opened the floor to a video recording English by Mr. Bukele announcing that he would send the bill to the National Assembly to make Bitcoin legal tender. The crowd rose to a standing ovation. A few days later, lawmakers passed a 3-page bill, which Mr. Mullers said he helped draft. Within ages, the legislation wasn't debated at the congressional committee level. Unions and business groups say they weren't consulted. Mr. Bukele's government has spent $180 million rolling out Bitcoin ATMs and an e-wallet with $30 worth of free Bitcoin for anyone who signs up. The government says the vast majority of residents signed up for the e-wallet, which is known as Shivo, local slang for cool, but shopkeepers report there are few sales using Bitcoin since crypto's price swings make it for day-to-day transactions awkward. Yeah, because they're always going to be comparing it to like the US dollar or something, right? Most Shivo e-wallet users took free Bitcoin and cashed it out for dollars, according to financial sector executives. Others allege that money in Shivo vanished through fraud. Ruth Lopez, lawyer for San Salvador-based rights advocacy group Chris Stossel, said her organisation has collected the signatures of more than 1,000 Salvadorians who say their identities were stolen through Shiva and were defrauded of their $30. Interesting. Mr. Lopez said Christosel filed suit with the Supreme Court in November seeking an investigation, but hasn't received any response. Adoption has been slow in the country where 2/3 of Salvadorians work in informal sector. Cash for most Salvadorians remains king. We're people who like to touch our money, said San Salvador cabline operator Danilo Martinez. In the port city of La Union, near the site where Bitcoin City is slated to be built, 42-year-old fisherman boat tour operator Louis Robles said that he hoped new development in his region along prime drug trafficking route would mean that more work for him. He also thanked Mr. Burkle for bringing crime down in La Union, where up until a couple of years ago, gang conflict kept most residents locked in their homes. The planned bond will be the first sovereign debt security to trade like crypto token on Bitfinex platform. According to Mr. Mao, it won't be available on usual bond markets. Not surprised there at all. US citizens and businesses are barred from using Bitfinex. Mr. Mao said Americans could invest through their broker dealers outside of the US or through offshore funds that participate in the bond. Last year, iFinex operator Bitfinex reached a settlement to pay $18 million in penalties to the New York Attorney General's office after prosecutors accused the company of hiding $800 million in losses through fraudulent financial statements. When nations issue their bonds are typically backed by New York or Luxembourg laws that grant creditors some internal protections. The Bitcoin bond will be the first security structured under El Salvador law. According to Mr. Mao, the government is expected to unveil legislation that will soon regulate Bitcoin bonds. It's bloody crazy. And they got like Bitcoin everywhere. It looks like a beautiful country. I really I don't think the Bitcoin thing's going to work out for them, but I hope it does. Because it'd be amazing. I'm not going to read through this. Oh no, we've almost finished. I'll finish it. In late July, Moody's in Investors Service lowered rating of El Salvador's traditional bonds further into junk territory, citing a deterioration of the quality of policy making because of Bitcoin's adoption and other measures. Fitch Ratings followed suit earlier this month, saying weakening of institutions and concentration of power in the presidency have increased policy unpredictably. On Twitter, Mr. Bukele is irrelevant in mocking critics in touting the country's crypto moves. He posts about Bitcoin purchases that he says his government has made by buying the dip. Interesting. In January, when the price of Bitcoin dropped 27%, Mr. Bukele said his government brought 410 Bitcoin for 15 million. Some guys are selling real cheap, he said on Twitter. I couldn't imagine the spread would be that huge. If this doesn't work out for him, geez, that's going to destroy his reputation forever. And I can't imagine anyone's going to like it if it doesn't work out. While there is no public data on transactions, Wall Street analysts have counted at 1,800 Bitcoin purchases for an investment of around 85 million, not a small number for a tiny economy of 27 billion. For much of last year, Mr. Bukele's photo on his Twitter profile featured laser eyes, an image used by crypto enthusiasts. He then changed it for a time to a photo of him wearing Julius Caesar style toga, with L'Oreal identifying himself as Emperor of El Salvador before relabeling as CEO of El Salvador. The president enjoys trolling his critics. Mr. Mao, earlier in his tenure, Mr. Bukele once forgot to take off a backward baseball cap that he had been using to keep his hair slicked back in his presidential vehicle. When he noticed that his detractors were irked by his unusual attire, he turned that hat into a trademark look, Mr. Mao said, recounting a story that he had been told by the president's advisors. You take what critics throw at you and you run with it. Very smart. Some Bitcoin investors are wary of Mr. Bukele turning into the poster child for Bitcoin. It's difficult because you don't want to support Bukele's administration while they dismantle democratic institutions faster than Hugo Chavez, said Alex Gladstein, a Bitcoin proponent who is also Chief Strategy Officer at the New York-based Human Rights Foundation. Mr. Mao said that he saw working with the administration as a way to advance the greater cause of expanding Bitcoin use. He said that he worked with Mr. Bukele in a circle, including two of the president's younger brothers, to design the Bitcoin bond. Final details were still being ironed out just hours after he took the stage with the president in November. The more important thing for me is to look for prospect aspects, which is that there is that this president is trying to lift the country out of poverty. Mr. Meow said, I don't need to agree with him 100%. Really interesting. That's actually added a lot of perspective. I feel like I know what's going on over there with the whole Bitcoin thing a hell of a lot more. So that I really appreciate that. That worked out really well. So I hope you guys got some value from that as well. If you're not on Discord, or if you're on Discord, I should say, I would love if you could join our Discord community. At the moment, it's pretty small. I really want to get it growing. Because I jump into other people's Discords and I just have chats in there 24/7, and I feel like I should be adding that value to my own community. Or to our community if you come and join. So just go to domwarnaar.com/Discord and it will actually forward you to the invite link, and I update that invite link. So that should continue to work. If it's not, put it in a comment or send me a message, tweet me or something. Let me know so that I can update that. Hopefully I'll be all over it though, and all on top of it, no matter when you actually watch this video. So I appreciate you guys jumping on. It's been a successful one so far. We didn't have as many people jump on today as we did last week, but that's okay. You can't have the good without the bad, right? But I really appreciate you watching this, and I hope you guys have a lovely week. I will catch you next week. If not, I will catch you tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be great. It's going to be an amazing live stream with Michael, and I can't wait. So jump on tomorrow. 100%. If you don't know who Michael is, and you look, I don't care how much you know about NFTs